was just another ordinary afternoon when 14-year-old Jason Carter found himself standing near the private airstrip on the outskirts of town. He wasn't supposed to be there. He had only stopped by after running an errand for his mom. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for him. As he watched the sleek silver jet preparing for takeoff, something didn't sit right with him. The way the mechanics hurried away, the unusual rattling sound from the aircraft, the nervous glance exchanged between two men in suits. It all felt wrong. His heart pounded. Was he imagining things? Or was something truly off? Jason didn't know much about planes, but his gut screamed at him. Something bad is about to happen. He couldn't ignore it. His body moved before his brain could catch up, and suddenly, he was sprinting toward the aircraft. "Stop! Don't fly! Your plane was sabotaged!" Jason shouted, his voice cracking with urgency. The crew turned, startled. The man about to buy him, Arthur Langston, a well-known millionaire entrepreneur, paused, his eyes narrowing at the teenager. Security was already moving toward Jason, but the boy didn't back down. "Please, sir, just check the plane. I swear something's wrong." Arthur hesitated. He had spent decades building his empire, making tough calls and trusting his instincts. And right now, something about the boy's desperation made him uneasy. With a wave of his hand, he halted security. "Check it," he ordered. The engineers inspected the aircraft. Moments later, the truth came crashing down. A critical part of the plane had been tampered with. If Jason hadn't spoken up, Arthur Langston would have taken off and never landed. The young boy saved a millionaire's life that day, but he had no idea that by doing so, he had just changed his own. The very next day, Jason was at home, flipping through an old comic book, when he heard a knock at the door. His mother answered, only to gasp in shock. Standing on their porch was a sharply dressed man, and behind him, a black luxury car with tinted windows. Jason froze. What was happening? Before he could react, his mother turned to him, her eyes wide. "Jason, he's here for you." But Jason wasn't the only one whose life was about to take an unexpected turn. Across town, a different story was unfolding. Malik Thompson, a high school senior, had always been taught to respect others, no matter who they were. So when he saw a pregnant woman standing on the crowded bus, struggling to hold onto the railing, he didn't think twice. He stood up and gestured for her to take his seat. "Here, ma'am. You should sit." The woman, a stranger to him, gave him a tired smile and sat down with a grateful sigh. "Thank you, young man." Malik simply nodded and went back to listening to his music. But just as he was about to step off at his stop, the woman reached into her purse and pressed a folded piece of paper into his hand. "Read it when you get home," she said with a mysterious smile. Curious, Malik tucked the note into his pocket and forgot about it, until later that evening. When he unfolded the paper, he had to read the words twice, his heart pounding. Because what was written on that note was about to change his life forever. What did the note say? Why was Jason visited the next day? Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Jason's mind raced as he stepped toward the door, his heart pounding in his chest. The man standing outside was tall, dressed in a sharp black suit, his posture stiff and formal. He didn't look like a regular visitor. He wasn't a neighbor or a delivery driver. No, this man was here with a purpose, and whatever that purpose was, it had something to do with Jason. "Jason Carter?" the man asked, his deep voice calm, yet firm. Jason swallowed and nodded. His mother, still standing beside him, placed a protective hand on his shoulder. She wasn't the type to let strangers just show up and take her son without answers. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady but cautious. The man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black card. "Mr. Langston would like to speak with your son. He asked me to bring him personally." Jason blinked. Langston, the millionaire? He barely had time to process what was happening before his mother crossed her arms. "And why would a millionaire want to speak with my son?" The man gave a small, knowing smile. "Because he saved his life yesterday." Jason felt the air leave his lungs. He had told his mom what had happened at the airstrip, but it had all felt so surreal, like something out of a movie. Now, standing in the doorway of their small home with a black luxury car parked outside, it felt real. His mother hesitated, glancing down at Jason. "Do you want to go?" she asked. Jason nodded, slowly, still unsure of what to expect. "Yeah, I think I do." The man stepped aside and gestured toward the car. Jason took a deep breath and followed. The door closed behind him with a quiet click, and as the vehicle pulled away, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment his life would change forever. Meanwhile, across town, Malik sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the small, folded piece of paper in his hands. His fingers traced over the creases, his mind spinning. The woman on the bus had seemed normal, just a tired, pregnant lady who had needed a seat. He hadn't expected anything in return. So why had she given him this note? And more importantly, what did it say? His chest tightened as he slowly unfolded the paper. The words were handwritten in neat, careful script. "You have no idea how much that simple act of kindness meant to me. But I want you to know, your kindness will not go unnoticed. Your life is about to change in ways you never imagined. Trust me." Malik's brows furrowed. What did that even mean? He read it again, trying to make sense of it. Was this some kind of prank? A random thank you note? He wanted to brush it off, but something about the words felt important. Almost like a promise. Just then his phone buzzed. He glanced down to see an unknown number flashing across the screen. A chill ran down his spine. His instincts told him not to answer, but before he could think, his thumb had already swiped across the screen. "Hello." A brief silence. Then, a woman's voice, soft but firm. "Malik Thompson?" He hesitated. "Yeah, who's this?" There was a pause before she spoke again. "You gave up your seat for me today." Malik's heart skipped a beat. It was her. The woman from the bus. "How did you get my number?" he asked, his voice coming out sharper than he intended. "I have my ways," she said, almost amused. "I told you your life is about to change, and it starts now." Malik felt a strange sensation in his chest, part excitement, part unease. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath, as if choosing her words carefully. "Let's just say, I know people who notice things, and we noticed you. You have potential, Malik, you just don't know it yet." His fingers tightened around the phone. He didn't like riddles. "What do you want from me?" "It's not about what I want," she replied smoothly. "It's about what you deserve. I'd like to meet you in person. Somewhere safe. Somewhere public, just to talk." Malik's mind raced. Everything about this was weird. Strange notes, mysterious phone calls. It felt like something out of a movie. But deep down, he had a feeling. Whoever this woman was, whatever she was offering, this wasn't something he should ignore. At the same time, Jason sat in the back seat of the luxury car, watching the city. Lights blur past the tinted windows. The man in the suit hadn't spoken much since they left, and Jason wasn't sure if that was comforting or unsettling. "Where are we going?" he finally asked. "Mr. Langston's estate," the man replied, simply. Jason exhaled. Of course the millionaire had an estate. He imagined some huge mansion with golden gates and fancy security guards, a place where someone like him, just a regular kid from a regular neighborhood, didn't belong. After what felt like forever, the car slowed and turned down a long, winding driveway. The gates opened without a sound, and Jason's mouth went dry as the massive house came into view. The car stopped, and before he could process what was happening, the man opened the door for him. "Right this way." Jason hesitated, then stepped out. The air smelled different here, cleaner, fresher, expensive. The front door swung open before they could even knock. And there, standing in the doorway, was Arthur Langston himself. The same man Jason had saved the day before. His sharp eyes studied Jason for a long moment before he finally spoke. "So, you're the boy who saved my life." Jason nodded, suddenly feeling very small. Langston stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. "Come in, son. We have a lot to talk about." Jason took a deep breath and stepped inside, knowing, without a doubt, that nothing in his life would ever be the same again. and neither would Malik's. Because miles away, in a quiet little cafe on the edge of town, Malik sat across from the mysterious woman from the bus, watching as she slid a small, sealed envelope across the table toward him. Inside was something that would change everything, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to open it. Jason stepped into Arthur Langston's grand estate, his sneakers nearly silent against the polished marble floors. Everything around him screamed wealth, the towering ceilings, the massive crystal chandelier, the paintings that looked like they belonged in a museum. It was overwhelming. He didn't belong here, and he knew it. But for some reason, Arthur Langston had personally invited him. The older man walked ahead, leading Jason into a sleek office lined with bookshelves. A massive window overlooked the city skyline, but Jason barely noticed. His attention was locked on Langston, who finally turned to face him. "You have good instincts," Langston said, his voice calm but firm. "Not many people would have. Noticed what you did yesterday." Jason shifted on his feet. I don't know. It didn't feel right." Langston studied him for a moment before nodding. "That kind of intuition is rare and valuable." He leaned against his desk. "I need to ask you something, Jason. How did you know?" Jason hesitated. How could he explain it? It wasn't like he was an expert on planes. He had just felt it. The tension in the air, the hurried way the mechanics had walked off, the slight metallic creak in the wind. It all added up to something being wrong, but saying that out loud felt ridiculous. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just had a feeling." Langston's lips pressed into a thin line, as if he were considering something. Then he turned and picked up a folder from his desk. "Jason, I believe you saw something yesterday, something important. And whether you realize it or not, there are people who won't be happy about that." Jason's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Langston opened the folder and slid a photo across the desk. Jason stepped closer. It was a blurry image of two men, their faces partially hidden, standing near the plane he had stopped. "These men were seen around my jet before takeoff," Langston said. "We ran some checks and they weren't supposed to be there." Jason's breath hitched. He had seen them. Right before he shouted his warning, Langston watched his reaction closely. "Do you recognize them?" Jason nodded slowly. "I think so." Langston's expression darkened. "That's what I was afraid of." He closed the folder. "Listen to me, Jason. This wasn't just a random accident. Someone wanted me dead, and whether you meant to or not, you got in their way." Jason's hands turned clammy. Are they dangerous?" Langston exhaled sharply. "Let's just say they're not the kind of people you want to be on the bad side of." He leaned forward. "That's why I brought you here. I want to make sure you're safe." Jason's heart pounded. He had thought this was over. He had thought stopping the plane had been the end of it. But now it was clear. This was just the beginning. Meanwhile, across town, Malik sat in the dimly lit cafe, staring at the sealed envelope in front of him. The woman from the bus watched him with a calm, unreadable expression. "Aren't you going to open it?" she asked. Malik hesitated, his fingers hovering over the edge. "What's in it?" She gave a small smile. "Something that belongs to you." Malik frowned. "I don't even know who you are." The woman tilted her head. "You don't need to. Just know that I've been watching for a long time." His skin prickled. "Watching?" She nodded. "Not in a creepy way," she added with a slight laugh, "but in the way people like me do. We notice things and we notice people." She leaned forward slightly. "And we noticed you, Malik." He swallowed hard. This was getting weirder by the second. "Why me?" The woman's gaze softened. "Because you're different. You do the right thing even when no one's watching. That means something." Malik's fingers clenched around the envelope. He wasn't sure whether to feel flattered or freaked out. "Go on," she encouraged. "See for yourself." With a deep breath, Malik tore the envelope open. Inside was a neatly folded sheet of paper and, his brows furrowed, something else. A small black key. He glanced up at the woman, confused. What's this for? She just smiled. Read the note. Malik's pulse quickened as he unfolded the paper. The handwriting was different from the first note, sharper, more deliberate. This key opens a door to something bigger than you can imagine. If you're ready to find out the truth, go to 312 West Haven Street. Midnight. Alone. His heart pounded. What was this, some kind of game, a test? He looked back up at the woman, but she was already standing. I have to go, she said, adjusting her coat. Wait, Malik said quickly. What's at that address? She paused. The answer to a question you haven't even asked yet. And just like that, she turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Malik sitting there gripping the key, his mind racing. Jason, meanwhile, sat frozen in Langston's office, his stomach twisting with unease. So, what happens now? Langston folded his arms. That depends. Do you want to go back to your normal life and pretend none of this happened? Or do you want to know the truth? Jason swallowed. He wasn't sure he liked either option. Langston sighed and ran a hand through his graying hair. Look, Jason, you did something incredible yesterday. But that means you're in the middle of something bigger than you realize. If you want to walk away, I'll respect that. But if you want to understand what's really going on, I can help you. Jason hesitated. He wanted to say no. He wanted to walk away and pretend this was just a strange dream. But something deep inside him whispered that if he walked away now, he would regret it forever. I want to know, he finally said. Langston nodded, as if he had expected that answer. Then you need to be prepared, Jason. Because once you know the truth, there's no going back. And as midnight approached, miles away, Malik stood outside a dark, abandoned building at 312 West Haven Street, his heart pounding as he clutched the key. Something told him that whatever was behind that door, it would change everything.